Hi there, I'm Sean Dillman. In this video, I'll be sharing 7 tips and tricks on how to read faster. In fact, many of these techniques are tried and true methods that I've been working on for years and you won't see in any other videos. Now I should warn you that this video contains advanced strategies and tactics, so I'm not going to repeat the same tips you've heard a million times already, like skimming sentences, paragraphs, and headings. Instead, you'll see advanced techniques for reading faster that actually work. Keep watching. Before I share my 7 tips with you, I need to tell you a bit about myself so that you understand that I know what I'm talking about and that I have expertise in this area. When I was a kid, fresh out of high school, I attended college to study computer engineering technology. I graduated in the top of my class and was on the president's list. The information that I learned at college about computers and technology have been instrumental throughout my career and have inspired some of the tips that I'll be sharing with you. After college, I completed an undergraduate degree in English literature and I graduated with straight A's, summa cum laude, meaning with the highest distinction, in the top 3% of my school. My name was published by the university in the city newspaper, the Toronto Star, along with a handful of other distinguished graduates. Presumably, I received A's and A+s in all of my classes based on the strength of my written assignments and closed book exams, all of which were based on a tremendous amount of readings. After graduation, I wrote the law school admission test, the LSAT, and was accepted to one of the best law schools in Canada. I thought that I had done a lot of reading at that point, but at law school, the professors assigned even more readings. After completing my law degree, I was called to the bar and began working as a practicing lawyer. So when I tell you that in the past few decades or so, I've done a lot of readings for many different reasons, you can understand that I do know what I'm talking about here. And this is something that I want to address right off the bat. When people ask me how they can learn how to read faster, the first thing I do is ask them what goal they have in mind. Everyone is different and we all have different reasons for wanting to read faster. Some people are like me and they want to know how to read faster so that they can excel at school and business. Some people have specific goals in mind, like acing the SAT, MCAT, GMAT, LSAT, or some other kind of standardized test that will be used for admissions purposes. Some people want to know how to read faster because they're voracious readers who love reading, and they want to be able to read all of the books by a particular author or everything in a specific genre. No matter why you want to know how to read faster, I'm confident that the tips and tricks in this video will help you. However, please keep in mind that I won't only be talking about faster ways to read printed text in physical books. I'm a big believer in technology, and many of my tips relate to consuming readings in a digital way, either visually or audibly. When I talk about reading faster, I don't necessarily mean only seeing sentences, paragraphs, and chapters, and then retaining what I've seen. I mean getting the information that I need into my head, so that I can retain it, either for a short-term purpose, like writing an exam or appearing in court, or for a long-term purpose, like gaining more wisdom or increasing my knowledge in a certain area. Tip number 1, use rapid serial presentation. Rapid serial presentation is a fancy way of saying that text is presented quickly, in sequence, in one place. The purpose of rapid serial presentation is to make it easier to read faster by reducing the need for you to scan with your eyes, reducing the need to move them left and right over words, and allow you to focus on one single place. Over long sessions, this can reduce eye strain and may help you read faster for longer. Rapid serial presentation software has started to become increasingly popular in recent years, and one of my favorite free resources is Accelerator, which can be found at www.accelerator.com. To demonstrate, I've pasted in some text that I want to read quickly. This is the first paragraph of the first chapter of the first Harry Potter book. This sentence contains 45 words. Assuming an average reading speed of 250 words per minute, it would take the average person about 10 seconds to read this. If I was going to read this text in the traditional way, I'd have it open in a book, scanning with my eyes from left to right, or in some kind of a word processor like Microsoft Word, or in a document reader like Adobe Acrobat or something similar. Using Accelerator and rapid serial presentation, all of the words are cycled through in the middle of the screen, and I don't have to look anywhere else. As you can see, the default setting in Accelerator is to cycle the words at 300 words per minute, but I'll click here where it says Settings and change the speed to 500 words per minute so that we'll be seeing the words at double the average reading speed. Now that I've made that change, I'll press the Read button again to show you the difference. For me, that speed works, and it allowed me to see all the words and comprehend the paragraph. Instead of it taking 10 seconds to read this paragraph, it will take only 5. And if we use this technique on text that took 1 hour to read, we could read it in 30 minutes, half the time, which is a very significant time saving. But if it seemed a little too fast for you, I encourage you to go into the settings screen and test out each of the settings so that you can suit it to your needs and preferences. For example, you can change the size of the text, how quickly the text scrolls by, and even how many words appear at a time. There are also additional settings at the bottom which can be used to slow down the pacing for larger chunks and speed up for smaller chunks to maintain an average speed. You can also add a slight pause at the ends of sentences and paragraphs. To make it easy to use and navigate, the developers of Accelerator have included simple keyboard shortcuts that you can see at the bottom of the screen. If you give Accelerator a try and you find that it works for you, I suggest that you use these keyboard shortcuts. For example, you can increase and decrease the reading speed by pressing the up and down arrows on your keyboard. For me, this is the easiest way to dial in the correct speed that works for me. Not too fast, not too slow, just right. Tip number 2, use summaries. One of the best ways to do something faster is to take reasonable shortcuts. If you've ever been to New York City, you may know that there are many shortcuts that appear all throughout the city that allow you to go places faster by avoiding slower areas of traffic and congestion. Using summaries is just like this, and if your reason for wanting to read something faster is to understand it quickly, then this is a smart approach. For students, using study guides like SparkNotes or CliffNotes are tried and true methods to get summaries of what certain books or texts are all about. By reading a summary about a book before actually reading it, you'll already have an idea of what's going on, who are the important characters, and what themes are included in the book. This advance or preview information will help you read it faster because you'll already know what to look out for. Using a different example, if you're wanting to read something faster because you're part of a book club and you need to read a novel but you don't have enough time before the next meeting, a summary will at least give you information about the characters, plot, theme, and other aspects. With this information, you may just be able to fake it through the meeting without anybody even knowing that you didn't read the book. If you're reading for business or academic purposes and the text contains a summary section near the end, read that section first to get an overview. If you find that the summary gives you enough information that you don't need to read the whole thing, then you saved a lot of time. However, if you still plan to read the full text, the summary will give you useful information and will help guide your reading and help you read it faster. Let's use this book, 80/20 Sales and Marketing by Perry Marshall, as an example. I'm viewing the book on the Amazon website and clicking here where it says Look Inside to get a preview. In the first 10 pages or so, the author discusses the Pareto principle, but he also provides a summary here on page 13. In 5 concise bullet points, the author summarizes all of the graphs, images, case studies, and other information that appeared up to this point. If this summary is all the information that I needed, the author has just saved me a lot of time. But if after reading the summary I still want to read the preceding pages, I can do that armed with a greater knowledge of what to expect, which will make it easier for me to read the pages faster. In legal practice, lawyers routinely use summaries to quickly understand what laws and court cases are all about and whether they may be of use to them. For example, this is a court decision involving a police officer who administered a breathalyzer test. This single paragraph contains 217 words and tells the story of what happened. This list of keywords contains 85 words and provides even broader information about the case, including that it involves criminal law, motor vehicles, and a demand for a breath sample. Finally, this short line is only 6 words long and tells us that the result is that the court found that the appeal should be allowed. In contrast, the full text of the decision appears below this part. It contains over 100 paragraphs and more than 15,000 words, and would take a very long time to read, much longer than reading the introductory summary. Generally speaking, most lawyers don't have the time to read whole cases, and if they want to know what happened in a case quickly and to know if it may be useful, they'll simply read the summary and then only look at the details of the case if they know that it may contain something that they're looking for. Lawyers generally don't read whole cases top to bottom out of interest, unless perhaps it's a new case in their area of practice and they know that it'll be useful for them to know this new ruling for the future. In most other cases, lawyers will simply read summaries and then look into the details if it seems promising. Although this is generally how lawyers read, you don't have to be a lawyer to read like a lawyer. If you're reading something because you have a specific practical reason in mind, like needing to know how to do something under the hood of your car, use the table of contents or index to quickly find what you're looking for and then zoom to that spot in the text. If you're reading something because you need to know it for a meeting or an exam, start by using a summary and then read more of the full text if need be. I should add that this last part is very important. When I say use summaries, be warned that depending on the situation, sometimes you can't rely on what other people think that something is about, and there may be no replacing your own reading of the materials. If you think that you can ace a course by not doing any of the readings and instead only reading summaries, this may or may not work for you. It's ultimately up to you to know where the line is and what works for you. But in general, summaries are very useful and you should always be looking for them if they're available, because they'll help you read faster. Tip number 3, use blue light reducing software. As with tip number 1, this is a technology-based tip that applies to people who do a lot of reading on digital devices, including laptops and smartphones. If you're one of these people, I highly recommend that you use software which dims your screen and automatically adjusts the display's color temperature according to your location and local time of day. This feature has become standard on many devices, but if you don't have it on your device, one of my favorite free options for Windows is a piece of software called Flux. The website address is justgetflux.com, and I think that that's a great domain name because that's usually what I say to people when I recommend it. Flux is amazing, and if you don't have it or something similar, get it, and your eyes will thank you. I started using Flux during law school, and I immediately noticed that it allowed me to read faster and longer by reducing the strain on my eyes. And on a similar note, to ensure that you're keeping the strain on your eyes down as much as possible when reading, be sure to view the screens on any digital devices in good lighting that's as easy on your eyes as possible. My analogy for this is that if you were trying to become a great basketball player, you'd want to have comfortable shoes that are easy on your feet and not causing you any unnecessary discomfort. If your shoes were one size too small, they'd hurt your feet and you wouldn't be able to stay on the court and practice as long. As with reading, you want to make your environment and surrounding conditions as favorable as possible for making it easy for you to read. This will ultimately help you read faster. As a small bonus tip, you should also read in a place that you find to be the most conducive to concentration. I find that there's wisdom in the expression, a place for everything and everything in its place. For me, I associate my bed with sleeping, so if I try to read in bed, I fall asleep. Bed is not the place for reading for me. My preferred place to read is sitting upright at a table, either outside, at a coffee shop, or near some natural light. If you want to read faster, figure out where and what time of day you do your best reading, and do it there at that time. Tip number 4, learn more about English grammar. For me, having a mastery of the English language helps me read faster because I understand everything that's going on every step of the way. It also helps me know what to expect, what the rules are, and what should and should not be happening in any given text. It's like the movie The Matrix. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen it. When Neo unlocks his ultimate power at the end of the movie, he can see the code that makes up the Matrix, and everything becomes easy for him, including stopping bullets, destroying a version of Agent Smith, causing the other agents to run away, and escaping the Matrix just in time before Morpheus destroys the Sentinels. When you understand English grammar, this is what reading is like. You know what each part of a sentence is, whether it's a verb, noun, adverb, adjective, a preposition, an article, definite or indefinite, etc. You also know best practices for how sentences relate to one another and the form that paragraphs should take. You know about grammatical errors, including dangling participles, sentence fragments, and misplaced modifiers. In my experience, knowing these things makes reading easier and helps me read faster because I know what's going on at any given place in the text, and it helps me anticipate what will happen, and it allows me to skip forward if I can already tell where the author is going, or if something is simply secondary to the main structure of the text. Using my script for this section of the video as an example, if you were reading this as text and you were at the part just now when I said it's like the movie The Matrix, you would know that I was using a simile. If you remember these from school, a simile is a figure of speech involving the comparison of one thing with another thing of a different kind. Crazy Like a Fox is a well-known example of a simile. In this script, when I said it's like the movie The Matrix, the word like is signaling that a simile is coming. And from that, you can guess that the thing I'll be saying next will expand on that simile. In this case, my explanation of Neo unlocking his power. That explanation contains 56 words and merely supports the simile that I set up in the preceding sentence. I provided the simile to give you another way to think about my explanation of what it's like to increase your power by understanding grammar. However, if you saw the word like and then correctly anticipated that an analogy was coming, You could skip it, and you wouldn't really be missing anything that was critical to your understanding of what I'm communicating. By knowing more about grammar, you can see the code that makes up the matrix, meaning the patterns in writing that will give you the option of either skipping ahead or proceeding with a greater level of comprehension, which will allow you to proceed quickly without needing to slow down to figure out what's happening in the text. This will ultimately help you read faster. To learn more about grammar, I would suggest that you look into a short and simple book that will teach you the basics. A few of my favorites are Understanding English Grammar by Martha Cohn, Loretta Gray, and Joseph Salvatore, and Plain English for Lawyers by Richard Wydick and Amy Sloan. If you're interested in looking at either of these books, I've added Amazon links in the description section. With respect to Plain English for Lawyers, even though the title says that it's for lawyers, I think that the book could help anyone learn more about grammar and effective writing. Tip number 5, increase your vocabulary and knowledge base. Now I know that it's easier said than done, but logically, having a bigger vocabulary and an increased knowledge base makes it easier to read faster in many situations because it means that you don't need to stop to look up words or explanations about concepts. Imagine that you're reading a sentence containing 10 words, but you didn't know what 5 of the words mean. Depending on where they appeared and how important they are in the sentence, this could mean the difference between you reading the sentence and continuing on, or you needing to stop and find out what certain words mean before being able to continue. Alternately, imagine that you're reading a paragraph and you understand what most of the words mean, but the subject is astrophysics, and you don't understand how the concepts work. You may need to stop and learn about certain concepts such as special relativity and quantum cosmology. When I was an undergraduate student, I regularly encountered words that I'd never heard of and hadn't encountered at college or during high school. In my field, I encountered words like hegemony, penultimate, and jingoism. Whenever I encountered a new word, I'd write it down and only stop to look it up if not knowing it made it impossible for me to understand what I was reading. Otherwise, I'd look it up later after I finished whatever I was reading. For example, if you were reading a sentence which said that a character was the nicest person in town and that they were gregarious and that everyone loved them, you could probably understand from the context that the word gregarious means someone who is sociable, fond of company, or something similar. You may, however, wrongly guess that the word gregarious is simply another synonym for nice. But this wouldn't matter because you'd still have a mostly good understanding of the sentence, and it wouldn't defeat your ability to generally understand what it means and what the character is like. However, if you were reading about a brand new character, and the text said only that the person was mercurial, and you didn't know what the word mercurial meant, you'd probably need to go and look it up immediately, because you wouldn't be able to guess the definition from the context. It may be important for you to know that mercurial means a person who is subject to sudden or unpredictable changes of mood or mind. If you moved on in the reading without learning this definition, you'd fail to understand what you just read and fail to build your vocabulary. As I said, increasing your vocabulary and increasing your knowledge base is easier said than done, and you can't simply snap your fingers and know more words and know about more concepts. However, by keeping track of new words that you encounter, recording them, and then looking them up at the right time, you can increase your vocabulary over time, and this will help you read faster. The same goes for building your knowledge base. You may need to stop and invest time into learning about special relativity and quantum cosmology to read a paper about astrophysics, but the next time that you encounter these concepts, you'll understand them and you'll be able to keep reading at a fast pace. Tip number 6, use audiobooks. For me, the concept of reading isn't simply looking at words on a page or screen. For me, reading simply means consuming words, whether written or spoken, comprehending their meaning, and retaining my understanding of them for some period of time. As I mentioned, I graduated my alma mater with the highest distinction, summa cum laude, and in the top 3% of my school. One of my biggest secrets for getting straight A's was that I studied mostly using audiobooks instead of traditional paper or digital copies. Because I was studying English literature, a great deal of my course materials were in the public domain, meaning that they were so old that the text was free and not subject to copyright. Each summer when I selected my courses for the fall, I'd choose subjects that I knew would cover royalty-free content, such as the works of William Shakespeare. I'd also contact my professors for copies of the syllabuses so that I knew what works we'd be studying. I'd then use websites like Project Gutenberg and LibriVox to obtain free text and audio versions of the materials. Whenever I'd go for a walk or go to the gym, I'd listen to the materials in my headphones. The great thing about this approach is that I was multitasking. I was learning my text while keeping my mind and body healthy at the same time. For any given text, I'd usually listen to it once on regular speed and then again on double speed to help solidify my understanding and commit things to memory. If I knew that a certain text would be particularly important for the course, I'd listen to it over and over again, such as Hamlet or A Midsummer Night's Dream. By the time each semester had started, I had already listened to every reading for all of my courses, sometimes more than once. When it came time to answer questions in class, I could often provide direct quotes from the text. This also came in very handy when writing closed book exams. I remember that many of the professors who graded my exams would write things in the margins like, "Wow, this is a direct quote, good job." By knowing the text so well and showing it on my exams, I convinced my professors that I knew the materials inside and out and that I deserved an A. This also came in handy for difficult exams that would provide a quote from a character and then ask, "Who said this?" For example, which character said, "Good my lord, what is your cause of distemper? You do surely bar the door upon your own liberty, if you deny your griefs to your friend." The answer is Rosencrantz in Hamlet, but I likely wouldn't have known that if I hadn't listened to the text over and over again and committed so much of it to memory. And on that note, please keep in mind that as soon as I finished writing the final exam in my Shakespeare course, I quickly moved on to the next course and cleared some of the information in my head. I've read a lot in my life, but I certainly haven't retained it all. Another thing that I should mention is that the power of using audiobooks is that you can control the playback speed. For example, I recently made a review video on the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, and please check out that video if you're interested. And although I did actually read the paperback version of the text, I also listened to it on Audible. The Audible app shows that at one time speed, it takes 5 hours and 35 minutes to read Atomic Habits. However, if I listen to the book at 1.5 speed, it only takes 3 hours and 43 minutes. This is a time savings of 1 hour and 52 minutes. Over a lifetime of reading, this is a great way to read faster. I should point out that during undergrad, I used a desktop scanner and text-to-speech software to make digital versions of any paper texts that I couldn't find online. For example, if a professor provided a lengthy handout on paper, I'd scan it using my Fujitsu scanner. If you're interested in a great one, please see my review on the Fujitsu ScanSnap IX1600 after you watch this video. I'd then run OCR on the documents, which means optical character recognition using Adobe Acrobat, and then copy and paste the text into software like TextAloud to produce audio files that I could listen to on my MP3 player at the time. Nowadays, I listen to texts on my smartphone. Finally, I should mention that this method works well for me because I have a fairly good memory for things that I hear, as opposed to things that I see. Also, it only works for certain kinds of materials. For example, if you want to read something that is very dense and difficult to understand, I wouldn't recommend using an audio version. Also, if you were reading a math or science textbook like this, obviously it wouldn't make sense to listen to an audiobook version. Audiobooks are best suited to texts containing fairly straightforward language that is set out in a standard format of chapters, made up of paragraphs, made up of sentences. Fortunately, this describes the kinds of texts that most people wish to be able to read faster. Tip number 7, read more and find your way. One of the best ways to get good at something is to do it a lot. However, the old adage, practice makes perfect, isn't necessarily true. If you practice something imperfectly, you'll simply get good at doing it imperfectly. The expression should be, perfect practice makes perfect. So if you're going to read a lot, be sure that you're doing it in a way that works for you. I remember that when I was a kid, I'd see an infomercial on late night TV, which featured a studious looking man who quickly ran his fingers over pages before a host would quiz him about the context of the pages that he had just scanned in only a few seconds. At the time, I was extremely impressed. It seemed as if the man had read many pages in only seconds. However, because I was just a child, I didn't appreciate that the purpose of the commercial was to sell books promising to teach supernatural speed reading powers, and that it was likely all a sham. Since that time, I've read many books about speed reading, spent a lot of time looking into the subject, and tried many of the techniques, and for me, they don't work. However, everyone is different, and all of our brains work differently. If you've never heard of Stephen Wiltshire, he's an architectural artist and an autistic savant who can draw buildings and skylines from memory. One of his most famous works includes an 18-foot tall picture of New York City, which he drew from memory after taking only a 20-minute helicopter ride over the city. So for someone like Mr. Wiltshire, perhaps skimming and speed reading may work, and he could read, comprehend, and retain the contents of many books in only minutes. For someone like me, however, that simply isn't possible and it doesn't work. But for you, maybe it would work. So if you want to look into speed reading and skimming techniques, I would encourage you to do so. And this leads me to perhaps the broadest piece of advice that I have, which is that you should do whatever works for you to achieve your goal of reading faster. I'm not sugarcoating it in this video that learning how to read faster may take hard work. Reading is a skill and it takes time and effort to get good at it. However, many of my tips and tricks can help you get to where you want to go faster right now. Now before I end this video, I want to show you a cool bonus tip. Use text-to-speech software. I use text-to-speech software every day, but I don't do it to help me read faster, I do it to help me write perfectly. Using text-to-speech software was another way that I was able to earn straight A's during my undergraduate studies. Before I submitted any assignment or paper for grading, I'd review them repeatedly with text-to-speech software to make sure that they were perfect. The result was that my writing was clear, concise, focused, and contained virtually no typos. Companies like Speechify and Grammarly offer software in this area, but there's been a text-to-speech solution in the Microsoft Office programs for many years, including Word and Outlook. So if you already have that software, you already have access to the amazing power of text-to-speech software. So because I want to wrap up this video and because I already made a YouTube video on this subject, I won't go into the details of how to use text-to-speech software, beyond saying that I use it every day and that I highly recommend it. If you're interested in learning more and seeing a step-by-step walkthrough, search for my other video called How to Use Text-to-Speech Software, or use the link in the description section below. So there you have it, 7 tips for how to read faster. If you learned something new from this video, then make sure to subscribe to my channel right now. Just click the subscribe button below this video. And now I'd like to turn it over to you. Which technique from today's video are you going to try first? Are you going to start using rapid serial presentation? Or maybe you want to start using more audiobooks? Either way, let me know by leaving a comment below right now.